So welcome to this presentation on Eclipse. I was here a year ago presenting Buildship 1.0, exactly a year ago, and today we'll present you what we've been doing between 1.0 and 2.0. And basically a lot has been happening, and we'd like to share that today. Today here is Stefan from Gradle, as well as me, also from Gradle. So the Buildship project has been quite active these last 12 months. And just like to briefly kind of summarize that. So we are part of 3 distributions, the Java one, the committer one, and the RAP one. We have another 5,000 downloads roughly from the marketplace, so people using newer versions than are with the distributions, or they use another distribution. We have a lot of discussions going on in the forum. It's not the Eclipse forum, it's the one from Gradle, so we do all these discussions in the Gradle forum. We get quite a few bug reports or feature reports in Bugzilla. We also have some successful open source partnerships, means companies that come to us and say, could you please do this feature with higher priority, and we find a deal and then we do it for them. We also get various community contributions in the form of PRs, and in general just community feedback via whatever media there is. If we take a look at the release schedule, because it's kind of important when we show the demos, we will ship 1.0.15 of Buildship with Eclipse Neon, so in about 2 weeks. And in parallel, we've been working on Buildship 2.0, and that will ship either with Eclipse Neon 0.1 or 0.2. So either in September or in December. It depends a bit how quickly we can wrap up everything and stabilize before we ship it with Neon. Right. And we're going to demo you both, and it will be clear which comes in which. So on the Buildship 1.0 X release, we ship 1.0.15 with Eclipse Neon, like I said, but we have released one more version, so if you want to use that one, you have to get it from the marketplace. And I'm not going to go into details about those things because Stefan is going to demo them live, but overall, we're going to have, we're having now share project configurations, so within your team you can share the settings of Eclipse. We have highly improved the synchronization, so import and synchronizing is basically the same thing. More is synchronized more accurately, etc. The Classpath is isolated, so nothing leaks, which is important when it comes to dependency resolution conflicts. Various improvements to the usability. Performance has been highly improved when you do an import. It's really magnitude faster. And there's also some basic WT support available now. There's more we can do there, and we will do more, but that's what we have in there. And so with that said, I leave it over to Stefan to do the hard work, the demo.
All right. So, let's start with the simplest thing that we all know, which is going to import a very simple Hello World project that I've prepared here. And the first thing you'll see is you now get this dialog telling you, hey, there's already a .project and .classpath file in here. What do you want me to do? Shall I keep whatever the user customized there, or shall I just wipe it all out and start from a clean slate? Because we have kind of a conflict here. On the one hand, we want to keep user customizations as long as Buildship does not cover 100% of what you can do with Eclipse. On the other hand, it can be very confusing if the user had some wrong configuration before and Buildship doesn't remove it. So we gave the user that opportunity to say, yeah, I want to start from a clean slate. Everything I have is covered by Buildship. And in the future, this option will probably disappear because we're pretty close to covering everything that you can do in the .project and .classpath file in the Gradle build, and also shipping that over to Buildship. And as soon as that is the case, you don't really need hand customized files anymore. Okay, so we have a simple project here, and Buildship already opened the task view for me. And the first thing you'll notice is that they're now grouped as you're used to from the command line. So you get a much quicker overview of what are the things you can do with your build. So for instance, there's a verification task, including the check task to run all your tests. If you don't want that, you can switch that off. So there's an option here saying don't group tasks, and then you just get this alphabetic list again. But I highly recommend it. Also, one feature I'd like to highlight that has been around for a long time, but many people don't know about, is just activating that filter up here and just searching for your task. So give that a try next time you have a big project and you're looking for that elusive task you wanted to run. So I'm just going to run the check task here, and as you can see, I have two little tests in my project. I double click, takes me to the test method, and I will just break this test and rerun the whole check task just to see what happens. As expected, my test fails. And now, in recent Buildship versions, you can rerun tests from the execution view. So you can say, oh, that one test failed. I don't want to run my whole check task again. It's going to take 5 minutes. I want to run that specific test again. And as you can see in the execution view, only that specific test was rerun. And now I'm going to fix it. And I can do the same. Of course, if I haven't run check before, what do? I don't want to run check just to select the test to run. So, of course, you can also do that from the editor. So you can just say run as Gradle test, and you get the same behavior. The test is run, now it's fixed. So this is really useful, because if you do run as JUnit test, that might work for simple unit tests that really have no setup, no tear down. But often you need to start a web server first before you can run your integration tests or set up a database or whatever. You have Gradle tasks for those. You have set up everything in your build, but Eclipse doesn't know about it. So if you just say run as JUnit test, your tests fail because, oh, you need to start the database first, right? By using run as Gradle test, Gradle will execute everything that it knows about. So it knows, oh, I need to set up the database, then run the tests, then tear down the database. So it's a much more productive way of working with your tests and with your build. All right, so this is working with a single project, much more usable already. But as your projects grow, you will surely have more sub-projects. And one thing that we improved in that area is that we now automatically import them. So I included a sub-project that I have here, and I say, Gradle, please refresh my project. And automatically, all those sub-projects are imported too. Now, as you can see, I have another sub-project here, which happens to have a leaf that has the same name as above here. So what happens there? I'll include that, and you can see I already have this project called Sound. So if this was naive, it would break, right? So then call refresh Gradle project, and as you can see, of course, it doesn't break. It does name deduplication, and this works already with Buildship 1.0.15, but in Buildship 2.0, which we'll see later, this will also work across builds, across the whole workspace. So we cannot just import new projects, we can also rename existing ones. So let's take my Hello project, rename it, tell Gradle to refresh, and my Eclipse project is renamed. So we're getting really much closer to having everything defined in Gradle and Eclipse mirroring it to 100%. And these were just the project names, of course. But there's more. So if you look at the build Gradle file, I have a very simple example here. I'm going to add the PDE nature to all of my projects and just refresh. And PDE nicely tells me, oh, you don't have a build properties file. Yes, that's because it's not really a plugin project, so let's remove that again. And refresh, and see a PDE bug, because it doesn't remove the error. But so, the cool thing about this is, if you define it in Gradle, you define it probably once. You say, all my projects are plugin projects, or Java projects, or Scala, or whatever. And you don't have to go into 100 Eclipse projects and edit the configuration files to say, oh, you also need this nature and this builder, etc., etc. You just do it once, and Buildship will do the rest for you. The same goes for Java source settings. So you can see right now, since I'm building with Java 8 on my machine, I have the JRE8 container, and my compiler settings are set to 1.8 compliance. But I can, of course, change that. Tell Gradle again to synchronize, and immediately I have a Java 1.6 execution environment and Java 1.6 compliance settings. All right. Now, Etienne mentioned the Classpath improvements, and that's probably one of the most important things we did around synchronization, because we used to just use Eclipse's re-export mechanism. So an upstream project has some dependencies, it re-exports them to the downstream projects. But what if your downstream project has a certain dependency on a certain version? It cannot use whatever the upstream project defined. So I used here, let's say, SLF4J 1721 in my upstream project. But in my downstream project, I say, no, I don't work with that. There's a bug in it or whatever. I only work with 1719. I need to force that version. Yeah. If I just re-export it in Eclipse, then I would have it on the class path anyway. I might even end up with 2 versions on the class path. Even more fun, especially with SLF4J. So what we did there is, instead, we now isolate the class paths completely. So every project in Eclipse gets all its transitive dependencies put into the dependency container, and no one re-exports anything. So everything runs exactly as if you would run it on the Gradle command line. So you can see here, that project uses 1721, and the other project that I had customized uses 1719. All right. Another small improvement, small oversight that we had there is older Buildship versions did not support having folders. So if you happen to have some classes folder lying around and you wanted to add that as a library, this is now also possible. So I'll just refresh here, and then you'll see in my dependency list down here that I added this little lib folder to the Classpath container. All right. So let me just quickly close that. Other usability problems with multi-project builds are, if you have a hierarchical multi-project build, you often end up seeing a lot of folders that you don't really care about. So let's say I have a parent project and it has 100 sub-projects all listed here. I have them in my workspace, I already see them, but I also have them here in my parent project, and I really don't care about them. So we added a filter to all the views that you are used to, Package Explorer, Project Explorer, Navigator, that you can filter out those sub-project folders, and the same goes for the Gradle build folder. So we don't want to remove that completely from the workspace, because you might have generated Java sources in the build folder, and they, of course, need to be compiled for your project to work, but you probably don't want to see the rest in there. All right. So, as I mentioned, we try to be very defensive about synchronization. So if I have a user-defined source folder and I say, let's call it source main foo, and I refresh, then Buildship will be very selective about what it updates. So it knows that source main foo doesn't exist in Gradle, but it will not throw it away. That might change in the future once we have covered everything that you could do in Eclipse. Okay, so this is all nice and well. Cute little hello world project, no problems there. But what happens in the real world? You don't have 4 sub-projects, you have 4,000. At least some of our customers do. And a more realistic number is, for many projects, a few hundred sub-projects maybe. I used to be in the Xtex team. They have on the order of 150 sub-projects now, right, Lorenzo? Yeah. Sounds about right. So we really put a lot of effort into making Buildship very fast, and I just want to demo that and show you the big old Java project, which is one of our performance test projects, which has 500 sub-projects. I'm going to import this, and you can see, whoa. So this is already, up until this part, this was just Gradle fetching the model. And this has already gotten a lot faster, and the Gradle core team is still optimizing the hell out of this, so this is going to get even faster. And from when I click override to the workspace being ready is what Buildship is doing. So you'll see it takes almost no time for each project to synchronize it with the Gradle model. And then there's a quick auto build, and I'm ready to go. And I've imported 500 projects into my workspace. And I've actually checked that, and I've used the normal import wizard to import the same project. So that wizard doesn't do anything. It just imports them from existing files, and it's slower. So that was quite a fun find. So we've really improved a lot there. Also in terms of startup performance. Older versions of Buildship, I'll just close and restart here. Older versions of Buildship would recompute the Gradle model when they were started and reset the class path, which led to a very expensive and unnecessary auto build on startup. We've also optimized that away. So this model is loading now because I had the task view open, but you can see my projects are ready to be used. There's nothing blocking me from working, and there's no auto build going on. So everything as snappy as I would expect it. Okay, so this is about what you can expect from 1.0.15. So it's very fast, it synchronizes almost everything you could want, and has lots of usability improvements. But thanks to an open source sponsor, we also have 1.0.16 very soon, which contains some important improvements for WTP projects. Does anybody use WTP here? No? All right. Maybe. I'm going to tell you anyway. So in a web app, you often have dependencies that you need to package into your web applications, and others that are supplied by your runtime environment, by your app server or your servlet container, like the servlet API. You don't want to package that into your application, otherwise you're going to get class loading problems. And what Buildship does now is it will mark those dependencies correctly. So the Gradle build already knows which dependencies should go into your war file and which dependencies should not. So as you'll see on the build path, if I look at these entries, I said SLF4J should go into my war in the Gradle build, and Buildship correctly marked it as please put this into web and flip. And I have another dependency, the servlet API, which definitely is supplied by my servlet container, so I don't want to package that. And Buildship marked this as exclude this from publishing and export. So this feature is going to come with Buildship 1.0.16, and we use that opportunity to also add one other little feature, and that is many people complained that the Git and SVN plugins have this problem that they don't allow you to run an import wizard. They only allow you to import from existing files or import as a general project, so plain project without any configuration, which is what I'm going to emulate here by creating a new plain project. And to work around this use case, we added an action that allows you to say, add the Gradle nature to this project. And of course, you can also use this to bootstrap your Gradle adventure. So let's say you have a Maven project, you say add Gradle nature, and then you go into the task view and say Gradle init, initialize this project from the Maven descriptor files. All right, so that's the extent of improvements that we have for the 1.0x line of releases, and now we're going to get into the 2.x improvements.
So before we go there, one thing to keep in mind is that we have the vision that everything about your project is defined in your build. So the build is your source, your single source of truth when it comes to the build. That's why we have gone even further with 1.0.15 or 1.0.16 now. Until we get to the point where, like Stefan said, everything about your project is defined in your build. And you just you import that project based on that build, and everything is derived from it. So we have gone even further now, but there's still a little bit left, and we'll close that gap as well. And at that point, there's no need to share anything except your build file, and everything is in there configured. So if we look at 2.0, there is one big topic. That's why it's also the 2.0. That is composite build support. That's something that Gradle supports also from basically on the command line, you could say. So that is an aggregation of multiple multi-project builds, and that is a typical use case in larger projects. So you have project A, you have project B. There are individual projects that with multiple sub-projects that can live on their own, but sometimes you want to combine them, especially when they have dependencies on each other. So as well, Stefan's going to demonstrate that. And then continuing the story of having everything in your build configured, we are also having putting in some improvements to the classpath synchronization. So everything really about the classpath that you can do in your project file will be in the build file as well. So you don't need to tweak it anymore at all. All right, so let's see a demo about that as well.
Cool. So I'm just going to switch to it. So, as Etienne said, you often have projects that are independent from each other. They have independent release cycles. They live in independent repositories. They have different teams. So, you don't want to put them into one big build. But sometimes, let's say you have an application and a library, and the library has a bug that only manifests itself in that application. So you want to put them together and try it out, and you want to fix the library and see the effect in the application right away, right? So this is what Composite Build is about. So let's give that a try. I have a little application project here. I'm gonna choose override, it doesn't matter in this case. And of course, Eclipse is giving up on me. That's not a problem. It wants some library, so I have a dependency in my build file that I don't have in my local Maven repository or anything yet. It says, I want my company lib. And I'm afraid Eclipse just gave up on me. So this is milestone material. All right, so this application is going to build against that library. So imagine this could be in my company repository, a library called my company lib version 1.0. But now this library has a bug, and I want to check it out next to my application and change it. So I'm going to import the lib project. And immediately, without me doing anything further, those two projects are linked together. So I have my lib project here. It says its project name is lib, and its group is my company. So it matches the dependency that I had specified. And my code in the application is now linked against the code in the library. So I can develop them together, do refactorings across multi-project boundaries, run my tests, check that everything works now, and check both projects back in. And I can, of course, this doesn't just substitute dependencies in Eclipse, but also if I run tasks in the task view, the same will happen. So when I say I want to run the tests for my application, then it will first compile the library locally and use that locally compiled jar. And this opens up lots of cool opportunities for the future. So we could do partial imports, for instance. If you have a huge build, you have like 100 or 1,000 sub-projects, and you only want to use a small subset of those. Currently that's not really possible, but in the future we could just say, okay, you import those 5 sub-projects, and if they depend on something outside of that subset, we just build the jar locally and then link against that jar instead of the project. So kind of the other way around. Instead of replacing a binary with a project, we replace a project with a binary. So this might be a story for Buildship 2.1. Yeah. So this opens up many cool possibilities. And this also fixes this problem that I talked about. What if 2 different builds that usually don't know anything about each other have sub-projects with the same names? So both these projects here have a sub-project called docs. So I'm going to tell Gradle to refresh that. And as you can see, I get app docs and lib docs. So I no longer have this problem of having to deduplicate project names across project boundaries. I can just let Gradle do it, and Buildship do it. So this is where Buildship is going. You will get automatic composite builds. Just import your projects, And if the publication of one project matches the dependency of another, it will be replaced. It will work both in the workspace and in the task execution. So this is the big, exciting feature we're working on for Buildship 2.0. And now we're going to look at even further down the road, our roadmap, and what other exciting things we would like to do.
All right, so what we're going to do beyond composite builds, there are many options we have, many things we want to do, but the things high on our list is further build-driven configuration of the project, like I just explained before. So there's more we can do to really bring them in sync. You might have heard that Gradle will provide at least an option to write your Gradle build files based on Kotlin. So you're still going to get a DSL, but the engine behind it is going to be Kotlin and not Groovy anymore. And that should be super exciting for everyone that likes to do IDE development in the IDE, because I mean Groovy is not much happening in the Eclipse world, right? So the Groovy support is basically non-existent in Eclipse Neon. So which means it's really hard to have any kind of IDE support. With Kotlin, there's active development for Eclipse plugins. You will be able to have the code completion, the navigation, and all that stuff in Eclipse. So you can edit your Gradle scripts based on Kotlin in Eclipse. So that's great. Of course, you can also edit it outside of Eclipse, right? And the other one is the Gradle.com integration. So we have a SaaS-based solution that is about capturing insights of your build, uploads it into the SaaS, and then visualizes it and analyzes it. I'm going to show a bit more about that in a second. And it would really be nice to also integrate that into Eclipse to get all those insights straight in Eclipse. There's more we could do, we would like to do, but we don't really have the resources. We already have 2 people working full-time on it. So what I showed before is what we really want to do first, but there's more that we could do. So if people have any interest in higher prioritizing certain things, that could be an opportunity for like sponsorship. Say, yeah, this is something we would really like to have. Let's make it a priority. And that's just like a sample list of things we could do. That would be nice. Well, it's more than nice to have, but that we could need some support. So let me just give you a short demo of Kotlin integrated into Eclipse. So basically what you can see here is creates a new project based on, it's really on, it's not very sharp. I'm not sure why this is happening because the resolution was quite high. So I'm going to talk through it a little bit. It's only a minute long. So basically you have an editor, and you can just imagine that this will be your Gradle script. Right now it's not a Gradle script, it's just a Kotlin class, but Kotlin supports scripting. So you can have a Gradle script, you create you declare your tasks, your repositories, etc. And so here what would happen is 2 classes are created. This is really, you just have to follow your imagination. 2 classes are created, and what you get the structural view, you get the code completion, and that's already all there. Showing you plugin for Eclipse. You get code completion, you also get navigation, you also get refactoring support, that's all there to do. You can also run them, the classes, and get the actual output down here. Right. So basically the point here is to show you that JetBrains works actively on an Eclipse plugin for Kotlin, and it's available, it's usable. Now the next step to do is to also have the plugin be extensible such that we can hook Buildship into it and kind of add the scripting support. And from that point on, you can write your Gradle scripts in Kotlin, run them on the command line, as well as run them in Eclipse, but also edit them in Eclipse, and you get the code navigation, the refactoring, as well as the completion, right, documentation, and so on. Right. And if we ask our users, that's what a lot of them miss the most, is the IDE support for editing scripts. So basically, this is our solution for it. It's not based on Groovy, it's based on a Kotlin-based DSL, which doesn't mean that we give up on Groovy, but at least within Eclipse, there is no future for Groovy right now. So it should be exciting that you get that support. The other thing that I mentioned is the Gradle.com, and that just gives you, it's again very honest, not very sharp. What I mentioned is, as you run your Gradle build, you can say, please capture data about the build. How long did the task take? When did the project configuration happen? And so on. All this is collected, uploaded to a SaaS, to the cloud basically, and there it's visualized. And what you see, you get information about performance, about tests, about your tasks, about your hardware, and all that stuff. And here I just give you an example of the performance, where you will see, for example, how long did my task take in total, how long did it take the longest task, and so on. Overall, group by project, for how long did my dependency resolution take? Did I have any dependency resolution during during project configurations, which should not be the case, that's kind of a bad sign, and so on. Right? So a lot of this capturing is then displayed in this way. And it goes further than that, because once you have all the data, well, we can also give you some advice. So we also have some suggestions that will tell you, well, maybe you shouldn't do this, or there's something problematic with that, etc. Right? And so really integrating that into Eclipse would be really cool too. That you get those insights about your build that you ran, or multiple builds, and an aggregation of the results across builds in your IDE. Right? So that's another thing we want to work on. Yes. And just to round this off, kind of the key points where you can go to. So the project is on GitHub. On the GitHub under Eclipse. The project itself is on the projects.eclipse.org. We are also on the marketplace, so every release we do, and as you can see, we did 16 releases within the last 12 months, is on the marketplace. If you want to use something newer than what we shipped with the latest with the latest Eclipse distribution. We also have the forum. People are quite active there. It's on the discuss.gradle.org. So if you see nothing on the Eclipse one, it's not that nothing happens, it's just this forum that we're using. Because it's the most natural place for Gradle people to go to. Maybe that shifts the more people of Eclipse use it. We'll see. Right. At least there's a point where you can express your ideas, your feedback, and so on. Yeah, so if you're not already using an Eclipse distribution that has Eclipse has Buildship integrated, you can get it from the marketplace. Also, the one at 16 is really nice with WTP support, the initial one. And as I said, Buildship 2.0, Neon 1 or Neon 2 will have it in there as well. So with that said, thank you for your attention, and hopefully you have fun working with Gradle and Buildship.